Hey everybody, it's Triple J and welcome to another tutorial video for Rimworld, a story generator by Tynan Sylvester. Last time we got our game all set up and walked through every decision you'll make before landing. Now we've landed on our planet and are ready to start building our colony up to survive this harsh landscape. But before we start building, I thought I would make a video to go over the menu bar and sort of the functions and information each of the tabs give you. There is a ton of information in each of these tabs, and it will definitely feel a bit overwhelming at first, so I thought it'd be valuable to give a brief overview of them, so when we discuss and use them more later on, it will hopefully feel less intense. The first tab, Architect, is probably the tab you'll use the most, as it accesses everything you can build in your colony, including some orders for your colonists, which leads us to the first one, which is just order. And this allows you to flag certain things for mining. So if I click on mining and I tell them to do this, Benway here is going to go and mine. You can also cut plants, harvest, tell people to hunt animals out in the landscape, different things like that. We will go into more detail on how this all works in practice in the next video. The next one is zone. And this one allows you to draw zones and stockpiles that tell your colonists essentially where to put stuff, where they and your tamed animals can roam, and where to place roofing over structures or leave areas unroofed for growing zones for crops. So here I can tell I want you to do a growing zone and I want you to grow right there. Things like that. I can tell them to place stockpiles, and this will essentially tell them that they can put all of this stuff into a stockpile. You can see Benway is grabbing this helmet and is going to plop it right there. So again, we'll go into more of these a little bit later on. Below these next two comes each specific building menu. Structure refers to bridges over water, your walls, your doors, and columns for support. Each wall, door, and column can be made out of various building materials. More of these will appear as you mine some stone out. You can make them out of, jade and different sort of various resources that you can collect on the map. Production is where all your various workstations will live for cooking, crafting, and research. Furniture will list all the items you can build that add to your colonists' overall comfort. I should note that almost everything here, when built, has a quality assigned to it, which is based on the skill of your builder making the furniture and some RNG. The better the quality, the more comfortable the furniture and or the more beautiful the piece of furniture is, which improves your colonists' opinion of the room, which in turn increases their happiness. It also increases your wealth. The quality ratings in order are awful, poor, normal, good, excellent, masterwork, and legendary. Building your colonists big comfy rooms for sleeping, eating, and working will keep them in positive spirits. Power down here will hold all your options for generating and storing power to your colony, along with conduits to connect the sources together. Again, as you research more, you will start to see more power options, including batteries down here, but we don't have those researched yet, as we just getting started. Security contains options to build your defenses, to protect your base and your colonists. This will be used more in practice in a later video. Miscellaneous has some miscellaneous items to build, like graves for the dead, but also some gathering spots for certain things like where you pack up your caravans, where you would like them to hold parties when they do it, and where they can even get married. Floors, pretty self-explanatory. They allow you to build floors. Pretty straightforward. Different flooring types consume varying amounts of material and offer different levels of beauty. Floors can also improve walking speed. Recreation is an important one for the sanity of your colonists. They need to have activities outside of work to have fun. Now, during their recreation time, they can do things that don't need building, like they can stargaze, they can meditate in their room, or they can go for a walk, and that fulfills a certain type of recreation. But things like the horseshoe pin, chess table, billiards, and poker fulfills other types. The more options they have, the more fulfilled in recreation they will be, thus more happy. As you progress, they will start to also require more options for recreation. So very early on, just having a horseshoe pin will be fine, but then later they're going to want more and more things as you progress. Again, more options can be researched, like telescope and television as well. The ship is going to look completely empty when you start. This is where the ship parts will populate when you begin researching them. The parts necessary to build your ship to escape the planet, one of the win scenarios in Rimworld. Lastly is temperature. Like we mentioned in the last video, temperature will affect your colonists always. Whether you're in a desert, you need constant cooling, or you're in the jungle needing air conditioning, it's always something to be aware of. You will indicate the temperature right over here as well on the right-hand side. You will use coolers to create cold storage to store food longer, as you can adjust the temperature of heaters and coolers once you place them. We will definitely be discussing temperature more in the future. The next tab is your work tab. This is another heavy one. I promise not all of these are as thick with information. Some are definitely more straightforward, but these first few tabs are ones you'll be accessing a lot. So I will say the colonists here will not match the ones we picked from the first tutorial. I went back and created a new save, but the seed of our planet and landing location is the same if you're trying to follow along. So remember when we were picking colonists and we were seeing all of their skill sets? Well, here are those skills just laid out in a different way. So this tab is where we prioritize the jobs we want our colonists to do and in what order, operating from left to right. You can see here the higher priority is to the left, lower priority is to the right. Now for beginners and people just trying to kind of work through this for the first time, the game gives you options for how much you want to control. So this interface simply allows you to tell them what to do and what not to do by checking or unchecking the boxes. So for instance, if you only have cooking checked, anything unchecked, they will just simply not do. They will only cook. If you put doctoring, they will doctor people when needed to be tended to, and then they will cook. If you turn on mining, they will only mine after they cook. You get the idea. So that means research is at the end of the priority list. Now you might think, well, research seems pretty important. You've talked about it a couple times now. So how do I get them to research if I need them to do all these other things first? Well, that's where this little button comes into play. This gives priorities a numbering system from 1 to 4. 1 meaning top priority and 4 being the lowest. So this gives you more control over the order in which your colonists do jobs. You may want a pawn to clean before anything else. If I was to make that a 2 and everything else is a 3, they will clean first, but then they can also do the rest of this. So it's a lot more control driven, which is, it does feel very overwhelming at first, I will admit, but once you kind of get in the swing of things, see how the colonists react, you can make adjustments to these. It's a little bit of trial and error to get things to feel a little balanced, but once you kind of do, you'll get the hang of it and it'll start to become a little bit more natural. I find it's best practice to leave things for 1s that are going to be urgent. I usually leave things at 2s. So let's say, let me give you an example. So if everything is set at a 2 for this pawn, okay? Let's say I literally want them to warden, handle, grow, mine, plant cut, okay, etc., right? But let's say I really need them to get growing done. Then I can shift grow to a 1. And then they will automatically do that one first. I don't have to shift really any of the other numbers. That's why I always leave 1 to urgent things. Like I always want them to firefight. If there's a fire in our base, I want that put out. So I make it a 1. And you can do things like at 1s for doctoring, right? That's very important. But generally speaking, leaving things at 2 can be a little bit more helpful. The other thing that's really nice about this menu is you can see the passions that people have and how good they are. So the lighter gray means they're more better at things, and this will start to ultimately become sort of this gold color, as you can see here. Whereas Braz here is a 16 in research out of 20. So very good. So you can kind of see at a glance what passions they have for it and whether or not they're good at it, which is very helpful. This takes some playing around, but generally speaking, you want to make sure that colonists are prioritizing things like cooking, building, growing crops, and harvesting crops, as those directly relate to advancing your colony. Things like cleaning are also important, as a clean base means a happier colony. This just takes some playing around, and again, we'll touch on this much more in the future. Next tab is restrict. It's sort of the schedule for your daily life of your colonists and where you want them to go on the map. As you can see, you can set anytime hours, work hours, sleep, and recreation. Now, in my experience, I have almost never given colonists specific work time, as if you just leave it as anything, they will still do work. If you restrict certain work times, yes, you guarantee them working, but it won't allow them to really eat or sleep or interact with others during a colonist event on their own. They will only do the work. So it can be useful at times. I just have found it much easier to sort of leave things fairly open-ended for them, although I will set recreation for them, and generally I'll set that before they sleep, and that seems to work out pretty well. The assign tab is a little bit more advanced and probably not something you will use very early on in your colony, especially when you're just getting started with the game. Essentially, it allows you to restrict certain clothing types or qualities of clothing, it restricts certain types of food, and it gives them instructions on drug policies. More on that later. Animal tab shows you at a glance the tamed animals that you have in your colony. Right now we just have Daisy, our guinea pig. We can restrict her area where she can roam, and we can see what skills she has learned from us training her. Unfortunately, guinea pigs don't have the capacity to learn any more skills, but animals like dogs can learn all these skills and can be useful in helping haul things around your colony. Note, you cannot actively click on an animal to tell them to do things like you can with your colonists. The wildlife tab is very useful for easily discovering what animals populate your map. You can click on a specific animal and you can find their location, and you can even quickly set them to be hunted for food or tamed to join your colony. This symbol here is indicating these are predatory animals. So always good to be aware of where these animals are at any given time, because what they will do is they will hunt smaller animals around the map, but they might even go after your animals, especially Daisy here, or worse, they will hunt your colonists for their next meal. So definitely good to be aware of those creatures as they lurk about your map. The research tab is next, and neatly shows you the order of research to gain certain new skills and acquire new weapons and parts. Now, if we click on something, it'll show that it is red because we don't have a research bench built yet, but if you click on a research, it will tell you what it gives you. The green indicates what is already researched at the time of our start. So, for example, batteries will give us the ability to gain batteries and build them. It is always helpful when you're in these menus to click on the name and it will give you more info on it. Again, this can be very overwhelming, but it will fall into place when you start playing, and it's always good to maybe just sort of check on these things. It tells you a little bit about the batteries. You can click on other things, like if we were to get air conditioning, unlocks the coolers, different things like that, especially when it comes to like weapons. It shows you what weapons it unlocks, and very, very handy to kind of click on this and learn your way about some of the things. You can even show what materials it can be made out of, things like that. Your quest tab shows you the quests that your storyteller generates for you and holds them here to look at them and see which ones you might want to tackle to further the colony along. It'll show you the available ones, it'll show you the active ones that you have already accepted, and historical quests that you've already finished up. The world map is simply the same interface as when we generated the initial seed, but this time there's a little blue icon now for our home on this planet. Here you can see where certain quests will take you and how far they'll be from your base using these little red arrows. You can right click here, and it'll show you your estimated travel time. Definitely more on caravanning in the future. That will probably be a separate episode all on its own. The history tab, which is this one here indicated by the little book, will show you a line chart of your colony's wealth over time. Right now it's not really gaining at all because we haven't really done anything yet, but it will show over time as your colony increases. It will also show the exact amount of wealth that you have right now. Lastly, your factions tab is the same from when we built the world in the previous tutorial and is just there for your reference when people friendly and foe start visiting your base. And that's the menu bar in a nutshell. I mean, much more to learn with all of this, but for now, hopefully this scary bar filled with all the information is just a little less scary as you move forward. Next time, we will explore these icons over here and the map landscape itself, and get a feel for our bearings, implementing the usage of the tools that I showcased here. As I continue to make these tutorials, I always worry that I'm stripping it down to too small of steps, but each time it ends up being a longer video than I intend, so I think this might be a good pace. Let me know your thoughts and any questions you may have. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope this video helped any of you starting out your journey in this game, and I look forward to seeing you in our next tutorial here in Rimworld. Bye, everybody.